Welcome to People First Builders, the podcast spotlighting people who champion the well-being and happiness of others. I am your host, Julien Chabet, and today I will be welcoming Arnold Beekes. Arnold, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, Julien. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. So, Arnold, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? So that the audience can get to know you.
Well, I think that's the most basic question we can ask ourselves. So if I answer, it's an answer at this point in time, because I'm still getting to know myself. And I think it's an ongoing process. But for now, and I don't like it, I'm an innovator, I'm a brain fitness trainer and a generalist.
All right. And so you try to put the well-being of the people first. This is my understanding, right? How do you word that in your own words? Because we all have, for instance, from my perspective, I talk about people first world. How do you state it in your own words? How do you?
Well, actually, when I looked at your material, it made me think about that I always say about the people-centric organization rather than a product-centric organization. And so it's been very, very long a part of my work and what I'm doing. And it's a response to my upbringing, which was not nice, to put it politely. And when I first started to work and when I very soon get into a management role, it was like, I'm not going to do this dictatorial way of leading, which is part and parcel of the education system. Well, basically any institution. Yeah? So it's like, and for me, for my upbringing, it was, my father was literally a military officer when I grew up. Yeah, you're smiling.
What I like. I can imagine.
So I was like, I don't want to be like that. So for me, well-being part is like the counter force towards that force, which I experienced in every cell of my body, and I don't like it. Yeah? So that's when I already very soon I became a manager and whatever. Is like, I need to respect people. I need to see people for their strengths. I need to is like treat them like humans rather than as cogs in a machine, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So yeah, it's a long-winded answer about how your upbringing shapes the way you look at things. And for me, it was like, we always say you have to follow a positive example in life. Huh? It's like, follow which person or persons or group or whatever. Yeah. Most of the time, people end up being frustrated because it becomes impossible to be like Napoleon or Tony Robbins or whatever. It's like, oh, I like that. Yeah, but I'm not as successful as that person. Then you end up being frustrated. I would rather say, well, what I'm applying and which works, I think, much better is that you follow a negative example. Is like, I don't want to be like this person.
So very early in life, you decided to put people first, right? You decided to go more toward the well-being of the people, right? It's important because from a people perspective, sometimes it starts when you're very young, sometimes it starts in your 20s, sometimes it starts after a number of decades in your job. But for you, it started quite early in life that you say, like, I want to put people first. I want to work on the well-being of the people. Okay.
Yes.
And so the travel, your journey has been management inside corporation and then going more and more toward doing your own things. If you can take us a little bit through this journey, how you evolve.
Yeah, yeah. I ended up actually my first job was in a small company, but we did very, very technology oriented, advanced work because we were introducing in the Netherlands the system of scanning, barcoding, everything in the food and retail branch, yeah? Which now is everywhere and everybody thinks it is well, you know no better. Yeah? It's like you scan the system and you
Yeah.
pay whatever. But I'm talking about the thing when that was not the case at all. So I worked in that organization for 3 years. And then I started working in a very large IT company, which most people don't know. Well, at least if you're of a certain age, it's called Digital Equipment Corporation or DEC. You know it?
No, I don't know this.
See, it's quite interesting because the moment I started working there, it was the second largest IT company in the world. Number one was IBM.
Okay. No.
They were at its height, they were working 120,000 people. Yeah, so really, really big. Very soon there, I became, well, no, not very soon, and it took a year, a first management class, and then I became a people manager, which a first line people manager as a marketing manager. And because I work in a very growing IT technology company, but I'm not a technical guy. I studied law, so it's like for me in dealing with all of this stuff, I didn't my influence was not on the technical side because well I'm not a techie,
Yeah.
so that's why my success, and I'm totally convinced of that, was based upon that I knew how to deal with people and change. So in that company, I had in 13 years 12 different jobs. And I only applied when I came to work in that company, and afterwards, and now after a year, Arnold, we have a problem there. Can you do this? Arnold, we need someone who knows about sales and marketing and you have to do that. Arnold, we have a problem there. Can you do that? Yeah? That was almost every year. So that's why I quickly had to adapt and change and work in this new environment. And in the beginning, it's very hard, yeah, because, well, even if you work in marketing and you go to sales, or you work in sales and you have to go to operations, it's like it's a new language, it's new processes, and new stuff. But because I've been doing it such many times over and over again, I became very proficient at that.
Okay.
So, and every time it was like, you need to talk. Well, obviously, you get a certain picture. What is the problem or what is the challenge from a top-down view? Yeah, from your boss, the bosses, the management team, whatever. You get the picture from there. But I already very quickly understood is like that is one perspective. You also need a bottom-up perspective. And I understood that if I start talking with secretaries, if I would, for instance, I was working in the service division, which means there was maintenance of all the computer systems, whatever, meaning mostly a guy in a car going to a customer fixing a problem. I would ask and say, can I come with you for a day? Yeah, and see what kind of work you are doing and what you're experiencing and how customers are treating you or whatever. And when you do that a couple of times, you get a totally different picture.
Why do you get a totally different picture? What's the difference between the picture from the management?
Because they don't talk to each other.
Good point. Yeah, no, good point. Most of the time they don't talk, right? The top down decision don't take enough input from the ground, maybe, right?
Yeah, totally. But most people from the top, they take their decisions from, well, from inside an office, from a boardroom or whatever. They've no clue what are the customers, what are they saying, how does a computer room look like in a big company, what are the challenges, what everything. It's not that they don't want to, but they assume a certain reality which is totally different from their reality.
Okay. So you go on the ground, right? You observe, you collect this information, you spend a day with different roles, right? What's next?
Yeah, so that's basically, and then I come up with like, okay, this is how things can be improved. This is how we can implement change. This is how we can get better results. This is how we can grow. All of these things, most of the time I get from bottom up, talking with specialists, talking with people and whatever, and then I would implement that.
Okay, but how do you, so you implement that, but do you need the agreement from the management? So you gather basically insight from at the people level, right? So it's more people centric in terms of approach. But how do you deal with the vision of the management, who might be a bit different from your perspective on the ground?
Well, it's like when I always had to, well, somehow, yeah, I was part of the management, and I very soon grew in that organization. Yeah.
Okay.
My first management role was, I was a marketing manager with 10, 12 marketing specialists. But at some point in time, I had 6,000 people in Europe. So, yeah, I'm managing $1.2 billion. So it's the size changed with it, but the approach remains the same. It's like, sooner or later, you always, doesn't matter which level you are, you always need approval from other people for resources. I need X number of people extra. I need this amount of money. I need this time. I need this stuff. Yes, so you need to present it. But when I presented the stuff based upon my findings when talking with people from the workforce, I always got approval. I always got approval because they, well, number one, what helped is I built up a track record that I would meet my goals. That helps. But at the same time, it's like I could tell why and what's happening and giving the examples and all of these things. And they're like, oh, makes sense.
So you are able to explain clearly your insight and then linking to decision being taken. Why we take this decision because of what we've seen. Okay.
Yeah, and that is where I mostly is like, I'm a bridge builder between understanding the business where they're coming from, and because of all these different roles, I get a very good example how a technology company operates and what the challenges are or whatever. I don't know. Well, I cannot program or whatever. It's like very deep in the thing, but I understand their problems.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I consider myself, a bridge builder.
So how did you move from this 30 years inside the organization to what you're doing now?
Well, there was a short stint at another company. It's called KLM, yeah?
Okay.
The airline, where I was hired to be to run their internal IT operation department. Yes, so making sure that all the IT of the whole KLM organization keeps on working. Basically, that's what I was supposed to do. And they hired me because I had the customer perspective, and it was just an internal department which had to be more customer focused. Okay. I actually last week I spoke with someone, is that many IT departments in big organizations, they're kind of running their own show without any link with the business units or whatever. It's they're not clearly communicating because people don't understand. Oh, that's IT. So it's like, so that's what I did. I followed exactly the same process. And I came to find out that for years and years, there was huge neglect in everything what's happening. And I proposed a way of operating exactly the way I was doing in the other company. They didn't like that because I clearly showed that they either had been sleeping for the last years and years and years, or that they are willingly hiding some problems. Let me put it like that.
Yeah.
So the result was that as a whistleblower, I was kicked out.
Okay. Yeah, that happened. Yeah. Yeah. When you lift the carpet and you show all the dust below, some people don't like it sometimes. It's the way it happens. There's often one of two ways. Either someone react and they are okay to do the change, or no, we are going to continue in the same direction anyway, because it's how we have operated by the past. Okay. And so post KLM, it's when you started your own activities?
Yeah, then I had what the Americans call a perfect storm. So meaning that I lost my job, I was in a divorce then, my father died, and I had no house. So that all came in this
That sounds
period.
like a perfect storm indeed. Yeah.
So that forced me to look inside of myself and starting all my work around personal development, personal discovery, that type of thing. And at the same time, it was like, hey, I don't like bosses, so I want to start my own stuff.
Okay, so I think this is an important moment, and I want to pause on that because it's what's happening now for a lot of people. It's what has happened by the past for a lot of people, where there's really a turn point in life, right? Basically, they can be a perfect storm, or there's none, or it's just one event or a suite of events, but there's something that triggered change, right? And so how can you talk to us a little bit about that change? What happened? Where did you find resources, knowledge, information to actually move forward toward the next phase of your life to a certain extent?
We're talking about the year 2000, something like that. Yeah, so it's a while ago, and I found I had been very shortly before all of those things happened, a meeting outside of it was a private meeting where with folks actually, it's called MedNet, which was a meditation network, because I had started meditation while I was still working inside KLM, but I'd mentioned that at some point in time, but then they thought I was totally crazy. That was such woo-woo, strange thing, whatever. And again, I'm talking about 99, 2000, something like that. Yeah, so they were like, what are you doing? Arnold, is everything okay? Yeah, people are now are laughing about it with all the mindfulness and meditation, whatever. But more than 20 years ago, I was crazy. Yeah. So, but I had started, so I became part of a network, MedNet, meditation for a meditation network for managers, in different companies who also started meditating, but couldn't discuss it with colleagues. So that's why that community was created. Huh? Well, and there were guest speakers, whatever. And for me, it was a whole new world opening up. Huh?
Right.
And one of the speakers there was a guy who appeared to be a personal coach. I had no clue by then what a personal coach was and what he did. Huh? I'm a sports coach since I'm 17 years old, so that's what I know. But the personal, how did that work with it? But I had a presentation of the guy, and I was totally impressed. And I didn't know that a few months later I needed him. Yeah, so that's when I was, when everything ended, I was like, I'm going to ask that guy for help. Huh?
Okay. So this guy has been instrumental into your transformation. Can we say that? Is it?
Yeah, and also there was a guy who's later become a friend. I don't know whether you still have that I don't know the particular name, but sometimes in large corporations, when they lay off a lot of people, they hire like counseling services and people who guide you from inside the company to outside of the company.
Okay.
And there was also a man who was kind of a coach then, or whatever, and he mentioned all of these new things, and I was like, well, my ego was like, I know a lot about business and how that works, assuming that I know a lot about how the world works. But all these guys were talking about it. I have no clue. I have no clue what we talked about. Yeah, whether spirituality and mental thing, emotional. I was like, nobody ever talks about these things. I don't know. And so I was immediately extremely curious. Yeah, because it was like, and at the same time, and that's been my driving force behind everything what I'm still doing to this very day, and it irritates me to the bone, is like, why didn't they tell me these things?
Who is they? The school, the
The
parents,
school, my
the
parents,
system, right?
the universities, all of these things, basically basic skills, knowledge, mindset around how to live life.
Yeah, how to live life. Yeah, definitely.
So I was still like, and it's still a very much, like I said, a driving force to today is like, why did nobody tell me these things? Which I know by now, whatever, but I had no clue about. Seriously, for me, it was like, what's that? Huh? And yeah, now I know why that is, but it's like, it's it I've I started feeling, pretty tiny, in the sense that, yeah, I was high potential in a very large corporate environment, very successful, blah blah blah, and then there I was with no house, no work, no money, all of these things, and I'm like, wow, wow, it's like, and I thought I was a successful business guy, and now I'm nothing. It's like that. Well, that is not easy, but at the same time, it is like it created like, hey, I want to learn all that stuff.
Okay. And so, what were the key blocks that you discovered so over the past 20 years, right? Going through this transformation, what were the key blocks that you discovered that enable
Well,
you that today you put people first and you care about the well-being of the people?
I would say a major impact on me had when I I moved to abroad. I lived in Budapest for a year, and that's where I met a lot of teenagers, people in their 20s, 30s, because I had started a startup around teaching young people social emotional skills.
Okay.
And what they told me, what they shared, is that without exception, all of them had either experienced themselves some mental emotional challenges, like very severe stress, burnout, depression. And the part which struck me the most is that all of them knew someone who has committed suicide. So this is 9 years ago, and I was like, "What's happening here? What is happening here?" It's like I could not relate when I was growing up at their age that I knew anyone with a mental illness or suicide, whatever. It's like, maybe it was there, but I didn't know. Yeah. So I was like, this is a serious problem. So that's where I first get encountered that, mental health, well-being, all these things is a very serious issue, very, very serious issue, and it's limiting people tremendously. Mm. So that was one block. Another block was that in a lot of my ventures, I was not successful financially. So, and what I was taught and what most people are taught is like, you immediately think, I'm not good enough. That's what we all think. That's what we, as from a young child, is put into us. I'm not good enough, or I did something wrong.
Hmm.
Some people, a lot of people think I'm not worthy. I cannot do these things. I'm just not an entrepreneur. Or maybe I made a mistake. I didn't follow that program correctly, or I didn't do this, or maybe I'm just stupid in this area, whatever. Yeah. So I started losing my self-confidence, and in the sense that, like, yeah, I cannot do that. And then at some point in time, I was like, no, that's impossible. It's like nobody ever told me that I'm a stupid guy. So it like that's only my inner voice. Yeah? But it's the inner voice which is being conditioned into most of us.
Hmm.
That's what we think. I'm not good enough. And then I'm like, no, no, that's bullshit to think like that. Yeah? And then I started studying is like, hey, why do I think I'm not good enough? Why do other people think they're not good enough? What's behind that? And I came to the conclusion that it's really a structural conditioning in our society to make you feel not good enough, because then you will be obedient and then you do what your superior person tells you. Hmm? And you're afraid. Fear, yeah, driven by fear, is like, ooh, I mustn't make any mistakes, because then my boss, or whatever name you give that person, yeah, he will be angry or whatever. So I will have a problem. Yeah? So you're driven by fear, and you always have the feeling, and there's always the focus is on false mistakes, things which you didn't do correctly. Yeah?
Yeah.
Which starts at school already, or at home, or whatever. Yeah. So that's when I realized, like, it's a setup. It's a setup. We're being conditioned to think like that, but it doesn't mean that we are like that. I I, I speak with a lot of people all over the world. When I mention this thing about not feeling not good enough, I think I haven't met anyone who says, well, that's not for me. I don't understand what you're talking about. Hmm? So that's when I started my research in, like, how are we being what I call conditioned, and how does it work? Yeah, and so that was another block. And I would say the last block is where I realized is that you can what I call, you can upgrade your brain. You don't need to be stuck in that, may I say, slave mentality. Yeah, it's like you can get out of it. You can become a free man or a free woman, whatever. Yeah, it's like, so, but it takes work to upgrade out of that fitting in brain operating system, what I call like that. Is like, there's no need to stay stuck in that system for the rest of your life. So those were the most important blocks, I would say.
Yeah, thanks for sharing them, and you explained them in a very clear manner. So I think it's actionable and clear to the people. And so moving to what you're doing now, what's your approach to putting people first? What is it that you specifically do?
Well, I enable people to upgrade their brain, to move from what everybody thinks is their default brain operating system to other brain operating system, which results in the way that you think differently, you feel differently, you act differently, you speak differently. All of those things is that it's possible, that you can do it, and that you can get out of the cage.
So basically, you become a better self, right? You become a new version of yourself through upgrading your brain, which is visible on the different aspects.
You could even say is that up until that moment, I was not myself. I was a copy of what other people want me to be, but I was not myself. I did not live my own life. I lived the life of my parents. I lived the life of my teachers, of my bosses, maybe even my spouses, whatever it's like. I was constantly living someone else's life, but I was not living my own life.
So okay. So the technique help people to become themselves.
Yeah.
To find themselves. Okay.
Yeah, it's discovery, because I can still remember. I just shared about my first coach, that I can still vividly remember where I was sitting and what he was saying. It was like, because he was like, Arnold, what do you do? I don't want this anymore. I don't want a boss. I don't, whatever. Yeah, he said, okay, I understand. But what do you want, Arnold? And I was like, huh? Seriously, I had no clue.
Yeah. I think this is a key point, right? Let's even pause on that, because from the moment you actually have to become yourself, so basically you were not yourself, you were a copy of the system. But so when you are asked what is it that you want to be, it's a bit like you're clueless, because it's the first time in your life that you need to deal with yourself, I think, to a certain extent. So like, what do I want to really be in life? How do you do that?
Absolutely, is like, you very nicely phrase it, is like, what do I want to be and what do I want to do? Yeah. So it's those are two different things, but it's like, well, I can communicate and talk pretty smoothly, but then I was like, huh? So and he said, yeah, make a list. Yeah, just take your notebook and put down, like, one, I don't want this and I want the other. And I was like, I never ever anyone in my life had asked me that question. I was beginning 40s in that time. So before that, never anybody had asked me that question. Not my parent, not at school, not at business, whatever. They always said, we want you to do this. Yeah? Since then, I've been doing that exercise with my clients. Everywhere the same response. Yeah? So I think that is where, yeah, it's not a better self. That is where you are becoming yourself. But you have to discover, you have to work at it, because everything or a lot of things in society are not supporting that journey. So you have to, it's like being an explorer, being a discoverer inside of yourself.
Okay. And so can we give people one or two tips on how they can discover themselves? How do they get started? Because from the stage where you're clueless, how do you still manage to move forward?
I would say that one of the most important things is that you stop comparing yourself with other people. Because you tend to listen to all the voices in your surrounding, what you should be and do and whatever. So a critical thing is that you stop listening to those voices from the outside, and that you learn to listen to the voice from the inside. You could call it your heart, you can call it your gut. But don't listen to your head, because your head or mind, the mind is not in the head, but that's another discussion. It's like, because those are the voices from everywhere around in society. But it's like, try to listen from the inside out instead of from the outside in. I think that is extremely crucial. At the same time, a second tip I would say is that we are, as humans, we are holistic beings. We are not divided into boxes, into separate items where things are totally not connected. Yeah? So what I think has an impact on what I feel has an impact on what I think, what I eat, what I sleep, the people I deal with, everything is interconnected. Yeah? So we need to let go of the mechanistic view where we everything put in the smallest box as possible, but that everything connects, because you can do everything perfectly, but if you only sleep 4 or 5 hours or whatever, it's not going to work. If you drink every day a couple of beers, it's not going to work. Yeah? So when you're in that process from the beginning, you got to understand that it's not just one thing. It's not just what do I have to do for work, or what do I have to do to find a partner, or I mean, whatever. It's like, it's all of those things. It's not just one thing.
Okay. So you're helping people to find themselves, right? Tell us a little bit on how you do it.
Well, it's like start following your curiosity. Where are you curious about? Yeah, it's like, is it maybe the spiritual aspect which you find interesting? Well, dig into that. Yeah, do some workshops, do some courses, read some books, follow some podcasts, whatever. Maybe it's like, physically I have no energy, I don't feel good, or whatever. I'm like, well, start looking into health and wellness. Start exercising or walking or swimming. It doesn't matter. It's like start into those areas. It's like, do you feel like, hey, I'm always angry with people? Well, start like reading books, sources, look the internet, whatever. It's like, how can I build better relationships? Yeah, so be curious about the things about your pain points at one point, but at the same time, so it's not only the pain points, but also attract like, I find that fascinating. Well, start digging into that.
Okay. So one of the common problem of the people is often that they are so ingrained in the current system. Basically, they have their daily job and they depend on their daily job to feed their family, right? How do we start to extract them a little bit from this perspective, where the mindset maybe that, sorry, I don't have the time for that. I need to continue my work and do more of my work because I have to feed my family, and basically I need to continue my life on autopilot mode. Please don't disturb me. Like, what are some tips for those people? How can they get started?
Well, number one, they need to understand that the security which they derive from their job is not the real security. They can lose their job at any moment. Yeah, so it's a fake security. Yeah. I understand, because that's because you get your mortgage, you get everything, whatever. But it's like, hey, a company can be a merger with another company and your department can be gone, or you can get a new boss who doesn't like you, or there's a cost saving exercise, and all these things can happen, and everybody always thinks that's not going to happen to me. But I tell you, it's very likely that it will happen to you, and it doesn't matter. You can be 55, you can be 25. So there is no security in having a job. Look at all the things which are now happening with AI and further automation and everything else. So it's very likely that at some point in time you will actually lose your job. So the security which you have is inside of yourself.
That's true.
That is very critical. At the same time, is that, well, spend some time in each week doing this work. It's like, yeah, who am I? What do I want? You can always spend a few hours each week. So instead of watching TV or Netflix or going to a bar or dancing all night or whatever, it's just spend a few hours each week. Look at what that compounds to in a year. That's incredible. Yeah? So that you are more prepared and that you maybe even you find out is like, hey, I always wanted to do this or whatever. Start a side hustle, start a side job where you already maybe can start working on these things. Quite and you can do multiple things. I mean, in Romania, actually, a lot of people I meet here get two jobs, three jobs. So they they start doing like, yeah, some of them are financial reasons, other are like, hey, well, I spoke to a guy who he was climbing the Everest or whatever, which, which is expensive. Yeah, so but he had three jobs. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, so he needed the money. So it's like you can be creative. You're not stuck with that one job. You can prepare. You can do it. All of those things are possible.
Okay. In your practice with the service that you have today, what is the key persona that you talk to? Is it more young people? Is it more people in their 40s, 50s?
Um, it that all of that is like I work a lot with young people who are already have had some work experience where they are like, is that all there is? Is that my life? I don't like it, whatever. So that's where I help. But yeah, obviously there are a lot of people in what they call midlife crisis. But midlife crisis used to be around 40, 45, 50. But it's rapidly going down. So that people now in their 30s or and 20s, which are already experiencing similar things. But it's also elderly people who are like, yeah, what should I do? And not only for themselves but also for their family. Is like you and I did meet on Lunch Club. A lot of people who have children with mental emotional challenges.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And all of them, yeah, the moment they said, hey, I got a kid from 16, I'm a daughter of 15, I get these problems, these challenges. So it's very pervasive and all over the world, actually.
Okay. All right, Arnold. So if the people want to reach out to you and discover more about what you do, where can they find more information? Do you have a website?
Yeah, the main website, it's called brainathletes.club.
Okay, we'll put the link below so that people can access it. All right. Lot of insight. I love your perspective. I love how you share it with the people. It's informative and sharp. Thanks for your time, Arnold. It's been really nice to have you here today. And
You're very welcome,
let's
Julian.
continue to put people first.
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely needed.
Thank you.